The world worships people who arrive quickly. Fast money, fast fame, fast revenge, fast healing. But nobody talks about the people who survive slowly. Nobody talks about the ones who sit alone at night, staring into nothing, trying to convince themselves that tomorrow deserves another chance. The soul does not become strong in comfort. It becomes strong in delay, in silence, in being forgotten, in praying for something again and again and again, and hearing nothing back except their own breathing. Some nights the body sleeps, but the mind keeps walking in circles, thinking, remembering, breaking quietly. Funny, isn't it? How a human being can smile in front of everyone while falling apart somewhere nobody can see. I'm okay. No, they are not. But still, they refuse to become cruel. Still, they refuse to poison innocent people with their pain. Still, they carry disappointment without turning into monsters. That kind of patience, that kind of restraint is terrifyingly rare. Most people only respect noise, but real strength is often quiet. Quiet discipline, quiet suffering, quiet faith. No audience, no applause, no witness except God. And maybe the reason life keeps making them wait is because some souls are not being punished. They are being prepared. So let the pain speak. Let the silence shape you. Let the waiting clean something inside you. Because the strongest things in this world are built slowly, in darkness, where nobody claps. And that is why they do not fall easily. There comes a point where exhaustion stops sounding dramatic. It becomes quiet, heavy, routine. A person wakes up tired, walks around tired, smiles tired, answers people tired, and nobody notices. Because pain that lasts too long learns how to dress normally. And that is the dangerous part. Not when the soul screams, when it stops screaming, when it just sits there, staring at the ceiling at 3 a.m., thinking about every mistake, every betrayal, every delay, wondering if life is ever going to soften its hands. But some people, some very strange people, continue anyway. They continue while confused, continue while disappointed, continue while emotionally numb. Not because they enjoy suffering, not because they are fearless, but because something deep inside them refuses to die. Maybe hope, maybe faith, maybe pure stubbornness. Sometimes survival itself becomes an act of rebellion. The world thinks strength is loud, big speeches, big victories, big confidence. No. Real strength is dragging yourself through dark days without allowing darkness to enter your heart. That is strength. When nobody checks on you, but you still choose kindness. When life humiliates you, but you still refuse corruption. When everything inside you wants revenge, but you remain disciplined. That kind of self-control costs blood. People do not understand that. They only see the calm face. They never see the war behind the eyes. And maybe that is why patient people become dangerous later, because pain taught them things comfort never could. How to survive alone, how to think in silence, how to keep walking while emotionally shattered. Some of them were never allowed to be children for very long. Life hardened them early, too early. But look at them, still standing, still breathing, still trying. No applause, no rescue, no guarantee, only faith and another painful sunrise. Some people become cold after pain. Others become wiser. And the difference between those two people is patience. Because impatience makes suffering feel meaningless. But patience gives suffering a direction. A tired soul starts asking different questions. Not, why is this happening to me? But, what is this changing inside me? That question changes everything. Because suddenly, the delay stops looking useless. The loneliness stops looking empty. Even heartbreak starts revealing things. Who stayed, who lied, who only loved convenience, who disappeared the moment life became heavy. Pain removes masks very efficiently. And maybe that is why painful years create dangerous minds. Not evil minds, careful minds, observant minds. People who stop trusting words and start studying patterns. People who smile less but understand more. People who speak softly because life already screamed at them enough. There are wounds nobody talks about. The wound of feeling left behind. The wound of trying your best and still watching doors close. The wound of pretending to be okay because nobody around you understands what is happening inside your chest. And yet, somehow, the person continues. Not loudly, not perfectly. Sometimes they continue while crying in private. Sometimes while questioning themselves. Sometimes while completely emotionally exhausted. But they continue. And honestly, that is more heroic than most people realize. Because continuing without motivation requires something deeper than emotion. It requires character, discipline, faith. Most people can move forward when they feel inspired. Very few can move forward while feeling empty. That is where real identity is revealed. And maybe life is slow with certain people because their future requires stronger shoulders, stronger minds, stronger hearts. Heavy blessings often arrive after heavy preparation. So do not envy people whose lives exploded quickly. Fast things break quickly too. The strongest foundations are usually invisible in the beginning, built quietly, built painfully, built patiently. There is something strangely painful about becoming stronger. Nobody tells you that strength is expensive. It costs sleep. It costs innocence. Sometimes It even costs the version of you that once believed everybody had good intentions. And little by little, life starts changing the way you look at people. You stop listening to promises. You start listening to consistency. You stop chasing attention. You start protecting peace. That transformation is lonely. Because growth often separates people. Some cannot follow the mindset you are developing. Some only loved the weaker version of you, the version that tolerated disrespect, stayed quiet to keep everyone comfortable, accepted less than they deserved. But pain changes standards. A person who suffered deeply starts valuing different things: silence, honesty, loyalty, rest. A calm nervous system becomes more valuable than temporary excitement. And honestly, that realization usually comes after disappointment, after betrayal, after giving too much of yourself to people who only came to consume. But maybe that is why patient people become difficult to manipulate later, because they learn the hard way. They learned what fake care sounds like, what selfish love looks like, what hidden jealousy feels like. Pain sharpens observation. And sometimes, God delays certain things, not because you are forgotten, but because your heart is still being cleaned from unhealthy attachments, from ego, from desperation, from dependence on people. Some lessons cannot be understood through advice, only through experience, only through sitting alone with your thoughts, while life slowly removes illusions one by one. That process hurts a lot, especially when you realize some people were never truly with you. They were only with the version of you that benefited them. But do not let that poison your heart. Not everyone is evil, and becoming cold toward the entire world is not healing. Real healing is remaining soft without becoming weak, remaining kind without becoming naive, remaining patient without losing self-respect. That balance is rare. So if your path feels slower than everybody else's, do not panic. Some people are being trained for depth, while others are only chasing speed. And depth takes time. Very long time. There is a kind of tiredness that sleep cannot fix. Not because the body is weak, but because the soul has been carrying conversations it never had, apologies it never received, and memories it keeps pretending do not hurt anymore. And the strange thing is, people still expect that person to function normally, smile normally, work normally, answer normally, be patient normally. As if patience is easy when the heart is bleeding quietly. As if waiting does not become heavy when every day feels like proof that nothing is changing. But patience is not weakness. Patience is a person standing in the middle of emotional fire and still refusing to burn the world around them. That is not ordinary. That is discipline. That is faith. That is power with a wounded face. Some people want relief immediately. They want the door now, the answer now, the result now, the respect now, the healing now. But life does not always give important things to impatient hands. Sometimes it makes a person wait until their ego gets tired, until their desperation becomes prayer, until their anger becomes wisdom, until their pain becomes self-control. That process is ugly. Nobody posts that part. Nobody claps for the nights where a person almost gives up, then quietly breathes in and says, "Not today." Nobody sees the hands trembling. Nobody sees the chest tightening. Nobody sees the moment where the person wants to scream, but chooses silence because they know anger will not solve what patience must build. And maybe that is why delayed people become deep people. Because waiting forces them to see, to notice, to study life without noise, to understand that not every closed door is hatred, not every delay is failure, not every lonely season is punishment. Sometimes loneliness is protection. Sometimes rejection is direction. Sometimes silence is mercy. Sometimes losing what you wanted is the only way to receive what would not destroy you. But the heart does not understand that immediately. The heart asks why. The heart remembers faces. The heart counts years. The heart compares itself to people who arrived earlier, laughed louder, looked happier, moved faster. Comparison is cruel. It makes a person forget that every soul has a different weight to carry. Some people are being prepared in private because what is coming requires a stronger mind than public attention can build. Some people are hidden because exposure too early would break them. Some people are delayed because their character is still under construction. And character is not built in comfort. It is built when nobody understands, when help is late, when the chest hurts, when the world moves on, and the person must still choose not to become bitter. That is where patience becomes sacred. Not loud, not glamorous, sacred. No applause, no witness except God, no proof except the fact that the person is still here, still breathing, still trying, still refusing to let pain make them ugly inside. So let time do what emotions cannot do. Let time expose fake people. Let time mature the mind. Let time soften the anger. Let time separate what was only desire from what was truly meant. And while time is working, do not destroy yourself trying to rush what needs patience. Do not beg life to move faster. Do not hate yourself because your path is slower. Do not think God forgot you because the answer is not in your hands yet. Some blessings arrive late because they are too heavy for the old version of you. Eventually, a patient person stops asking life comfort every day. Not because they stopped feeling pain, but because pain became familiar. That is the terrifying thing about human beings. They can adapt to sadness, adapt to loneliness, adapt to disappointment. A person can carry heartbreak for so long that it starts feeling like part of their personality. And nobody notices, because the world only reacts to visible wounds. People notice screaming. People notice anger. People notice breakdowns, but quiet suffering is invisible. The person still goes to work, still answers messages, still laughs sometimes, still says, "I'm good." Meanwhile, their mind is exhausted. Their chest feels heavy every night. Their soul keeps replaying old conversations, old mistakes, old versions of themselves they can never return to. And maybe that is part of growing up, realizing that some chapters of life do not end with closure. They end with acceptance. Acceptance that not everyone who loved you stayed. Acceptance that some people misunderstood you completely. Acceptance that effort does not guarantee loyalty. Acceptance that healing takes much longer than the pain itself. That truth humbles people, especially the strong ones, especially the people who spent years trying to save everyone else while silently drowning themselves. You know what patience really is? It is waking up with emotional weight on your chest and still choosing discipline, still choosing prayer, still choosing honesty, still choosing not to destroy yourself. That is strength. Not motivational speeches, not fake confidence, not pretending to be untouchable. Real strength is continuing while emotionally tired. Most people only understand patience theoretically. Very few understand what it feels like when life keeps saying, wait longer. Wait longer for healing. Wait longer for answers. Wait longer for peace. Wait longer while everybody else seems to be moving ahead. That kind of waiting can make a person question themselves deeply. Am I failing? Am I forgotten? Am I wasting my life? And honestly, those thoughts can become very dark at night, especially when the room is silent, especially when nobody truly knows what is happening inside your head. But patient people learn something important. Emotions are temporary. Character is permanent. That is why they keep going even when motivation disappears, because discipline eventually becomes stronger than feelings. And maybe that is what separates mature souls from childish ones. Childish souls want immediate emotional relief. Mature souls understand that some storms must be survived, not escaped. Some storms teach restraint. Some storms teach humility. Some storms teach dependence on God instead of dependence on people. And honestly, that lesson alone changes a human being forever. Because once a person learns how temporary people are, they stop worshiping attention. They stop begging for validation. They stop chasing crowds that disappear the moment life becomes difficult. Silence becomes more attractive. Peace becomes more attractive. A small, honest circle becomes more valuable than fake admiration from thousands. And slowly, without realizing it, the person changes. Not louder, not more arrogant, just calmer, more observant, more difficult to manipulate, more protective of their energy. Pain matures people when it does not destroy them. That is why some of the kindest people also have the saddest eyes, because they know things now. They know betrayal. They know disappointment. They know emotional exhaustion. But they also know survival. So if life feels painfully slow right now, do not insult your future by giving up too early. Some transformations happen quietly for years before anybody sees results. Roots grow in darkness first, and roots must become deep before anything strong can rise above the surface. Some people think patience means sitting still, doing nothing, waiting passively for life to become kinder. No. Real patience is movement without immediate reward. It is effort without applause. It is discipline without visible results. And honestly, that kind of life can feel humiliating sometimes. Watching people succeed faster. Watching people celebrate things you prayed for years to receive. Watching less disciplined people move ahead while you sit there, trying not to let jealousy poison your heart. That battle is ugly, especially when nobody knows you are fighting it. Because envy rarely enters loudly. Sometimes it enters quietly, through comparison, through social media, through another sleepless night where a person wonders why their story feels heavier than everyone else's. But patient people eventually realize something important. Life is not only giving, life is also filtering. Filtering intentions, filtering relationships, filtering egos, filtering weak versions of ourselves that cannot survive pressure. Pressure reveals everything. A loyal person becomes more loyal. A fake person becomes exposed. A disciplined person becomes sharper. A selfish person becomes desperate. That is why difficult years change people so deeply. Not because suffering itself is beautiful, but because suffering forces honesty. A person finally sees what truly controls them: fear, validation, attachment, pride, attention. And maybe that is why silence becomes addictive after enough pain. Silence does not manipulate. Silence does not compete. Silence does not betray. Sometimes a quiet room feels safer than certain human beings. But even then, the patient soul keeps trying not to become cold. That is the hard part. Remaining human after disappointment. Remaining soft after betrayal. Remaining respectful after being disrespected repeatedly. That takes enormous internal strength, more than people realize. Because bitterness is easy, cruelty is easy, revenge is emotionally satisfying for a moment, but self-control? Self-control is spiritual maturity. There are nights where patient people almost collapse emotionally. Nobody sees those nights. Nobody hears the breathing change. Nobody hears the silence in the room becoming unbearably heavy. Nobody hears the thoughts saying, "You were tired, you were behind, you were losing time." And yet, morning arrives, and somehow the person stands again. Maybe slower, maybe emotionally drained, maybe smiling less than before, but still standing. That matters. People underestimate survival because survival looks ordinary from the outside. But some people survived thoughts that could have destroyed them completely. Some people survived loneliness so deep they started talking to themselves just to hear a voice. Some people survived years of uncertainty without losing faith entirely. That is not weakness. That is hidden endurance. And maybe life delays certain people because their future cannot be carried by fragile minds. So life keeps teaching them patience, again and again and again, until emotional chaos stops controlling them, until impulse stops controlling them, until they learn how to breathe through pain instead of escaping through destruction. Because impatient people destroy blessings with emotional reactions, patient people protect blessings with discipline. There is a massive difference. A disciplined person becomes terrifying over time. Not terrifying because they scream loudly. Terrifying because pain no longer controls them easily. Rejection no longer destroys them easily. Delay no longer humiliates them easily. They become steady, focused, emotionally dangerous in the calmest way possible. And the world rarely understands those people at first. Because modern life worships speed, quick pleasure, quick attention, quick emotional gratification. But deep people are usually built slowly, very slowly. Like mountains, like oceans, like strong roots hidden under the ground where nobody claps. At some point, a patient person stops trying to explain themselves to everyone. Not because they became arrogant, not because they stopped caring, but because exhaustion teaches silence. After enough disappointment, a human being starts understanding that not everybody deserves access to their inner world. Not everybody deserves explanations. Not everybody deserves emotional honesty. Some people only listen to reply. Some only stay while things are beneficial. Some only understand your value after your absence becomes permanent. And honestly, that realization changes the way a person loves, changes the way they trust, changes the way they speak, especially after betrayal, especially after being there for people who disappeared the moment your pain became inconvenient. That kind of disappointment leaves marks, invisible marks, the dangerous kind. The kind hidden behind calm faces and polite conversations. Because some people do not become louder after pain. They become quieter, more observant, more emotionally controlled. And people misunderstand that silence. They think the person became cold. No. The person simply learned that giving endless energy to the wrong people destroys the soul slowly. There is a reason emotionally mature people protect their peace so aggressively, because they know how expensive inner peace truly is. They know what it costs to rebuild yourself after heartbreak, to rebuild yourself after humiliation, to rebuild yourself after years of anxiety nobody noticed. The outside world only sees the calm version, It never sees the war that created it. Some people had to fight their own thoughts every night. Fight hopelessness. Fight self-hatred. Fight emotional emptiness. Fight the temptation to completely give up. And still, they continued acting normal around everyone else. That kind of survival changes a person permanently, especially when nobody came to save them, especially when healing had to happen alone. And maybe that is why patient people become deeply connected to silence, because silence watched them survive. Silence stayed when people left. Silence held their tears when pride refused to let them cry publicly. Silence becomes sacred after enough suffering. There are lessons pain teaches better than comfort ever could. Comfort makes people distracted. Pain makes people aware of time, aware of intentions, aware of how temporary everything in this world truly is. A patient soul eventually realizes nothing material can permanently calm an anxious heart. Not money, not attention, not status, not temporary pleasure. Only inner peace, only faith, only emotional discipline. And emotional discipline is painfully difficult, because emotions constantly want immediate relief, immediate answers, immediate comfort, immediate revenge. But patience forces a person to sit with discomfort without letting discomfort control their identity. That is rare, very rare. Most people react emotionally to everything. Patient people learn how to pause, how to breathe, how to think before destruction speaks for them. And honestly, that ability alone can save a person's entire future. Because one emotional decision can ruin years of progress. One moment of uncontrolled anger, one desperate attachment, one impulsive reaction, one wrong person trusted too deeply. That is why painful experiences sometimes become hidden blessings later. Not because suffering itself is enjoyable, but because suffering teaches caution, teaches boundaries, teaches emotional intelligence, teaches self-respect. And once a person truly learns self-respect, they stop begging for love, stop begging for attention, stop begging for understanding. They begin walking away quietly from what destroys their peace. That is power, quiet power, not loud dominance, not arrogance, not cruelty. Real power is emotional stability in chaotic situations. Anybody can look strong while life is easy. Real character appears when disappointment repeats itself again and again and again, and the person still refuses to become ugly inside. The strange thing about suffering is that it changes what a person finds important. Things that once felt massive suddenly become meaningless. Arguments, attention, showing off, winning every conversation, impressing strangers. After enough emotional pain, a human being starts craving simpler things. Peaceful sleep, honest people, quiet mornings, a calm heart. It is almost sad when you realize how little the soul truly needs to feel safe. Because most people spend years chasing things that cannot heal them. More validation, more money, more distractions, more noise. Meanwhile, their inner world is collapsing slowly in silence. And silence is dangerous. Not always destructive dangerous, sometimes revealing dangerous. Silence forces a person to meet themselves honestly, to sit with thoughts they spent years avoiding, to finally admit what hurts, what controls them, what they fear losing. That confrontation changes people. Some run from it forever. Others survive it and become emotionally different afterward. Because once a person truly understands pain, their perspective becomes heavier. They stop worshiping appearances. They stop envying shallow success. They stop confusing attention with love. And honestly, that maturity can feel lonely, very lonely, especially in a world addicted to performance. Everybody wants to appear happy, appear successful, appear confident, but very few people are honest about exhaustion, about anxiety, about emotional emptiness. Human beings are strange. Sometimes the loudest smiles hide the deepest sadness. Some people have not felt emotionally safe in years. They laugh, work, post pictures, speak normally, but inside they are constantly fighting pressure nobody sees. Pressure to survive, pressure to succeed, pressure to stay emotionally stable while life keeps testing them repeatedly. And still, they continue. That is the part nobody respects enough. People celebrate talent loudly, but they rarely celebrate endurance. They rarely celebrate the person who kept going despite disappointment after disappointment. The person who rebuilt themselves quietly. The person who learned patience while carrying invisible wounds. And maybe that is why deep people often look tired. Not physically, spiritually. Because awareness itself becomes heavy after a while. Awareness of how temporary people are, how quickly feelings change, how easily loyalty disappears when comfort disappears. That realization can harden the heart if a person is not careful. But patient souls learn something powerful. They learn how to remain soft without becoming weak. That balance changes everything. Because becoming cruel after pain is easy. Remaining disciplined after pain is difficult. Remaining respectful after betrayal is difficult. Remaining hopeful after disappointment is difficult. But difficult things build strong spirits. That is why some people become calmer after suffering instead of louder. They stop reacting emotionally to every small thing. Stop chasing approval. Stop trying to force connections that clearly damage them. Instead, they observe. They think carefully. They protect their peace carefully. And honestly, that scares certain people. Because emotionally disciplined individuals are hard to manipulate. You cannot easily control someone who learned how to survive alone. A person who became comfortable in solitude becomes dangerous in a very quiet way. Not dangerous through violence, dangerous through independence, through emotional control, through the ability to walk away from things that destroy their dignity. And dignity matters more than temporary pleasure. Patient people eventually understand that. They understand that desperation ruins judgment, that attachment can blind intelligence, that loneliness can make a person tolerate disrespect they would normally reject. So life teaches them slowly, through delays, through distance, through silence, through losing people they thought would stay forever. Every painful lesson removes another illusion until eventually the person stops expecting permanent comfort from this world entirely. Not in a hopeless way, in a mature way. One of the saddest realizations in life is understanding that some people only loved your convenience. They loved your attention, your softness, your patience, your availability. But the moment you became emotionally tired, the moment you needed understanding too, their energy changed. That kind of disappointment stays with a person for a long time. Because betrayal from strangers is painful, but betrayal from people you trusted deeply changes your nervous system, changes the way you open up, changes the way you ask for help. Sometimes it even changes the way you pray. And honestly, patient people suffer quietly because of that. They overthink conversations, overanalyze tone changes, question their worth in silence. Not because they are weak, but because they cared sincerely. Sincere hearts get damaged deeply, especially in a world full of temporary people. But eventually, pain teaches an important lesson. Not everybody deserves unlimited access to your energy. Not everybody deserves your softness. Not everybody deserves repeated chances. Boundaries are not cruelty. Distance is not hatred. Silence is not always weakness. Sometimes silence is self-respect. Sometimes distance is healing. Sometimes leaving quietly is the healthiest thing a person can do. And the mature soul learns that slowly, painfully slowly, because emotionally attached people always try to save connections longer than they should. They keep hoping, keep forgiving, keep understanding, until exhaustion finally teaches what words never could. Protect your peace before you lose yourself trying to protect everyone else. That lesson alone can save years of suffering. Because some people will drain your spirit, then blame you for becoming distant afterward. Some people will break your trust, then complain that you changed. Of course you changed. Pain changes people. Disappointment changes people. Loneliness changes people. But growth also changes people. Wisdom changes people. Healing changes people too. So never feel guilty for becoming harder to manipulate after everything you survived. Some hearts became quieter because life forced them to learn peace the painful way.